If you've ever been told you feel too deeply, care too much, or know things you can't explain, this is for you. You're not broken, you're remembering, you're not crazy, you're awakening in a world that teaches you to stay asleep. What if the reason you're falling apart is because you're the one meant to rebuild others? Not despite your pain, but because of it. Some souls don't crack because they're weak. They crack because they see too much. You were never meant to fit in. Not because you're flawed, but because you were born with a different kind of sight. The kind that sees behind smiles, hears what's never spoken, and feels what others can't name. You enter a room and your nervous system goes to work. You sense the unspoken tension. You feel grief that doesn't belong to you. You hear the subtext behind someone's silence. While others swim on the surface, you sink straight to the floor of the ocean. And for a while, that felt like a gift. Until the world told you it was a problem. Too intense, too sensitive, too deep. So you tried to shrink. You learned to soften your knowing, to round your edges, to hide your insight in metaphors and jokes. You taught yourself to smile on cue and stay silent when your truth made people uncomfortable. You traded your clarity for connection. You traded your light for belonging. You traded your soul's voice for society's comfort. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around, but from being unable to communicate the things that matter most." He wasn't talking about social distance. He was naming the exile of the visionary, the ache of carrying sacred truth in a world addicted to performance. You've lived it, the quiet collapse of pretending, the ache of nodding when you wanted to scream, the weight of seeing too much and having no one who wants to look with you. That kind of knowing doesn't just isolate you, it hollows you. But here's what you were never told. Your depth is not a design flaw. Your perception is not a glitch in the code. Your pain is not proof that something's wrong with you. It's proof that your soul remembers a way of being this world has forgotten. You're not misunderstood because you fail to explain. You're misunderstood because what you carry doesn't fit inside the language of surface life. There's no vocabulary for what you see in people, no job title for what you feel in rooms, no credentials for what your intuition keeps telling you. So the world dismisses you, silences you, labels you, until you begin to doubt yourself. But what if this isn't your breaking? What if this is your remembering? What if being out of place is the evidence that you were made to build a new space? What if the very thing that has made you feel cursed is your calling in disguise? You weren't built for small talk. You were made to speak soul. You weren't born to blend in. You were born to disrupt, to stir, to awaken. But first, you have to stop betraying your truth just to be digestible. You have to stop calling your light too much just because others couldn't hold it. You have to stop apologizing for the very thing that makes you who you are. Because the world doesn't need another echo. It needs someone who dares to be the voice, someone like you. Everyone wants the glow up. No one talks about the part where you lie on the floor grieving a version of yourself you can't bring back. Not because they died, but because you outgrew their survival story. You don't rise because you're fearless. You rise because what used to work no longer does. And you can feel the seams splitting from the inside. There comes a moment when your soul pulls the emergency brake. The job that gave you identity starts to hollow. The people who once felt like home now feel like echoes. Even your dreams feel like they belong to someone else, and suddenly everything collapses. But not all at once. Collapse is subtle. It starts with the pause before you answer, the tightening in your chest when you agree to something that doesn't feel right, the quiet grief you can't explain because nothing is wrong on paper, and yet everything feels off. That's not laziness, that's not dysfunction, that's your truth trying to break through the noise. Carl Jung called this the way to the beyond through your own particular hell. It's not a metaphor, it's the process of disintegration that must happen before rebirth. Not spiritual fluff, not cosmic romance, real undoing. There's an old myth you were never taught in school. Inanna, the Queen of Heaven, chooses to descend into the underworld. At each gate she's stripped of something, her crown, her jewels, her clothes, until she arrives completely naked, vulnerable and powerless. There she's hung on a hook, lifeless, forgotten. That's what collapse feels like. You're stripped of identity, of function, of roles that once made you feel real. Your confidence disintegrates, your purpose evaporates, even your voice feels foreign. And people around you don't understand. They offer platitudes, they suggest routines, they call it a phase. But you know better. You know this isn't a detour, this is the terrain. You know this isn't failure, this is fire. And like all sacred fires, it doesn't ask for permission. It burns what no longer serves until only the truth remains. This isn't the part where you snap out of it. This is the part where you surrender, because collapse isn't the end. It's the beginning of who you were always meant to be, but only if you stay, only if you stop running from the unraveling, only if you stop patching the cracks and instead ask what they're trying to reveal. Because what breaks is not the soul, what breaks is the shell, the costume, the performance, the version of you that was built for survival, not truth. Let it fall. Let the collapse happen. Don't flinch, don't rush, don't repackage it into something that looks good on social media. Feel it, sit in it, burn inside it. Because when the fire is done, when the smoke clears, when you're left with nothing but breath and bones, that's when the real self finally speaks. And what it says will not be loud, it will be quiet, clear, unmistakable. It will say, "Welcome, you're finally home." Most people think healing is the end of pain, but the truth is, healing is what begins when the pain stops being avoided. Even after the collapse, after the stripping, after the silence, there's something deeper waiting to be seen. Not outside you, but within. The part of you you've spent your life running from, your shadow, not the villain, not the flaw, the exiled self, the child who was told to tone it down, the visionary who was mocked for being too idealistic. The fierce, intuitive knowing that was dismissed as irrational. Your shadow is not your enemy, it's your orphaned power. Carl Jung once said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." He wasn't warning you about darkness, he was inviting you to mine it. Because wholeness doesn't come from brightness, it comes from integration. And integration only begins when you stop running from the parts of yourself you think disqualify you from love. There's a story, one that doesn't appear on timelines. Milarepa, a Tibetan mystic, once came to a teacher named Marpa, seeking enlightenment, but Marpa didn't give him answers. He gave him labor. He told him to build a stone tower alone. No help, no instructions, just effort. When the tower was finished, Marpa told him to tear it down, then build it again, then tear it down again. 3 towers, 3 destructions. No justification, no encouragement, just silence, and Milarepa endured it, alone, exhausted, broken open. Not because he understood, but because something in him refused to quit. It was only after all of this, after the ego had nothing left to stand on, that Marpa finally began to teach. Because before the soul can rise, the false self must bow. That's what the shadow demands. Not perfection, not punishment, reckoning. A return to the parts you buried because the world called them inconvenient. You don't become whole by becoming better. You become whole by becoming honest. You reclaim your voice not by finding the perfect words, but by admitting the times you swallowed them. You reclaim your fire not by forcing confidence, but by embracing the rage that taught you where your boundaries should have been. You reclaim your light not by denying your darkness, but by making it sacred. The shadow holds everything you thought you had to hide to be loved, and it's not asking to be fixed, it's asking to be welcomed. You've tried to heal by escaping the past. But what if healing is simply telling that past, "I see you, you don't have to scream anymore"? Because when the shadow is finally seen, truly seen, it stops whispering in your sabotage. It becomes a guide. It becomes the wisdom beneath your wounds, the boundary beneath your burnouts, the truth beneath your triggers. And when you integrate it, when you stop negotiating with your wholeness, something incredible happens. You no longer need to be validated. You no longer need to be perfect. You just need to be present. And presence is what frees you. Chapter 4, The Loneliness That Awakens You. Most people think loneliness comes first, but the real loneliness shows up after you awaken. After you've burned away the mask, after you've reclaimed your voice, after the shadow has been met, named, and held. It's only then, when you're finally becoming whole, that you realize how few are walking this path. It's not the old loneliness of rejection. It's the new loneliness of evolution. The world keeps spinning around you. Small talk keeps filling rooms. Surface smiles still pass for connection, but you've changed. You've stopped pretending to laugh at things that don't feel true. You've stopped performing agreement just to be liked. And in the space where connection used to live, you feel the echo. You've stopped shrinking to fit inside spaces that can't hold your depth. And in doing so, something beautiful and brutal happens at once. You create space, but you lose company. It's the ache of resonance unmet, the longing for a mirror that isn't fogged by fear or diluted by performance. And it hurts not because you're failing, but because you're finally being honest. Carl Jung knew this ache. After separating from Freud, he didn't run into the spotlight. He withdrew. He built a tower. He walked into the wilderness of his own psyche. And in that wilderness, he met not silence, but source. You're in that wilderness now, where the noise has quieted and all that remains is your breath, your thoughts, your truth. And maybe, for the first time, you're not trying to escape it, because something in you knows this loneliness is not punishment, it's a sanctuary. It's where your intuition sharpens. It's where your inner compass resets. It's where your boundaries become non-negotiable. In this silence, you start to notice the small things again. The way your body responds to someone's energy. The clarity that arrives when you stop seeking advice and start listening inward. The way truth doesn't shout, it hums. This is the loneliness that awakens you. It teaches you that you're not here to be filled by others. You're here to remember you were never empty. And the more comfortable you become in your own presence, the more you recognize that connection without authenticity is just performance in disguise. You no longer crave the crowd, you crave the few, the real, the ones who've walked through their own fire too. And until they arrive, you keep becoming, because you are not waiting, you are expanding. And when they do come, when the others like you appear, pulled in by the frequency of your truth, you will not need them to complete you. You will greet them as equals. This is the gift of the awakened loneliness. It turns silence into soil, solitude into strength. And when the world sees you again, they won't see the lonely one. They'll see the grounded one, the clear one, the one who knows who they are without needing to be known. Chapter 5. The fire that refines you. You survived the collapse, you sat in the silence, you faced the shadow, you let the loneliness do its work, and now the fire begins. But not the fire you expect, not the blaze that consumes everything in one glorious moment. No, this fire arrives slow, quiet, precise. It doesn't rage, it reveals. It burns not to destroy, but to purify. It finds what is false and turns it to ash. It finds what is true and tempers it into steel. You don't even know it's fire at first, you just feel discomfort. A subtle resistance. The clothes that used to fit don't feel right. The roles you once played now itch at your skin. The praise you used to crave no longer lands. What used to be fuel now feels like friction, and that's how the fire speaks. Carl Jung once said, if you want to create yourself, you must begin not with the best and the highest, but with the worst and the deepest. That's not a suggestion, it's a spiritual law, because what's deepest isn't polished, it's raw. And what's worst isn't bad, it's just unexamined. This fire will not ask for your permission, it will ask for your participation. It will pull you into the forge and say, let's see what's left when nothing's left to pretend, and you will be tempted to run. Because the truth is, everyone wants transformation until it costs comfort. Everyone wants to evolve until it requires extinction. But here's what no one tells you. Ashes are sacred. They are not what's left after you failed. They are what remains after you surrendered everything false. This isn't you falling apart. This is you falling in. You'll feel like you're disappearing, but you're not. You're dissolving into something more essential. Even your biology knows this. There's a condition. Takotsubo-cardiomyopathy, they call it broken heart syndrome. The heart literally changes shape under stress, under grief. It balloons, it cracks, it struggles to beat, but when it heals, it doesn't go back to how it was. It adapts, it gets stronger, it beats differently, but it beats, and that's you. You're not going back, you're becoming new. There's another story that lives here. St. John of the Cross, imprisoned by his own spiritual brothers, locked in a dark cell, starved, forgotten, and it was there, alone in the dark, stripped of everything familiar, that he wrote poetry that would echo through centuries. He called it the dark night of the soul. He didn't write it after he escaped. He wrote it while he was still in the dark. That's what this fire does. It teaches you how to sing inside the silence, how to speak truth with no audience, how to stay loyal to your becoming even when no one is watching. It takes everything that was performative and burns it. And what's left? The core, the real, the rooted, the holy. You don't rise from this fire with ego, you rise with clarity, not with noise, with presence, not for approval, for alignment. You rise knowing the difference between attention and impact, between validation and truth, between the mask and the soul. This fire isn't punishment, it's precision. It's removing what you thought you needed to make space for who you actually are. Let it burn, let it take what cannot come with you. And when it's finished, you won't just be someone who survived. You'll be someone who carries light, not because you were given it, but because you earned it. In the dark, alone, with nothing but breath and the will to begin again. Chapter 6. The Rise of the Visionary. You've walked the long way home, through the ruins of your identity, through the smoke of your old life, through the sacred loneliness that stripped you bare. And now you rise, not because you're healed, because you're honest. Not with fanfare, not with applause, with stillness, with eyes that have seen behind the veil, with hands that no longer grasp, with a voice that doesn't need to be loud because it comes from truth. You rise not because you won. You rise because you surrendered. You let go of who you were told to be. You stopped performing for a world that couldn't see you. You stopped explaining your depth to people committed to the shallow. And in that release, something sacred happened. You didn't become more, you became real. Now you walk differently, not faster, not stronger, just lighter, cleaner. You're not chasing meaning, you are meaning. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you're no longer negotiating with people who don't even understand themselves. You are the mirror now, the one that shows others what they've been avoiding, the one that doesn't flinch when someone projects fear or doubt or dismissal, because you've seen what you carry and you've stopped asking the world for permission to hold it. You are the Inanna who rose from the hook, the Milarepa who rebuilt in silence, the St. John who found poetry in the cell. You're not just the listener to these stories, you are the next one, and the world needs your chapter. If these words felt like yours, you're not broken. You're one of the few, the ones being called to rise, not for attention, but for truth, for alignment, for purpose. Share this now, don't wait. Someone out there is drowning in the silence you've already survived. Let it find someone still burning in silence, someone who needs to know they're not alone. Comment if you've lived this story. Let your voice echo where others are still afraid to speak. Subscribe, not for more content, but for connection, because this path is easier when we walk it together. And if your voice still trembles, use it anyway. That's how the fire spreads. The visionaries are rising quietly, fiercely, together.